from don't make it out. I know that I'm blessed. There's a few L's and millions, so turn that loss to a chance.
Tom Martinez.
What's up, brother?
Show, bro.
What's up, dude? I'm so excited to be here.
I'm excited for you to be here too, man. This will be fun. You know, it's always more fun to be able to do this with somebody that I've got a relationship and a connection with, and versus somebody I don't know at all. Although sometimes those people are kind of interesting to talk to, also because I don't know anything about them or know very little about them. But so for those of you that don't know Tom Martinez, this is a man that's been married for 25 years, 4 kids, a grandbaby that is on the way.
I'm not old enough to have a grandbaby.
No, yeah. And then different podcasts, yeah. So we'll definitely talk about, family and commitment and relationship. I think we could all learn a thing or two from you. 25 years as well, a veteran of the home building and real estate community, which is how we were introduced to each other originally. But 25 years, man, that's a long stretch. Founder and president of Valient Construction Holdings with 3 divisions: consulting, home building, and renovation.
Yep. Hashtag Be Valiant.
Hashtag Be Valiant.
Yep.
You like to prioritize your life by your faith, your family, and your focus. So I love that third word you use, focus, so we can dive into that a little bit. And then you love to learn, to train, to coach others, vacation in Mexico, play golf with friends. You don't play nearly enough and enjoy a good bourbon, probably too much, man. So
or maybe not enough bourbon.
Not enough bourbon.
Depends.
Welcome to the show, man. Thanks for being here, seriously.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. You're an amazing guy, you're an amazing leader. Love being around you. Learned a lot from you. We've worked together on some stuff, and you're killer. So just love being here.
Thank you, man. Same. And I think that, guys, when you find somebody that you connect with, that there's some chemistry with, I used to look at everybody, and I'm not proud of this, but I used to look at everybody with a dollar sign on their head. And it's like the second I gave that shit up and just really got to know somebody genuinely for who they were and come from a place of being interested instead of trying to impress or be interesting or get validation from somebody else, that's when magic happens, dude. And I feel like you're just one of those amazing individuals that I feel honored and privileged to know and to have a friendship with. And
by the way, I've seen so much growth in you with that just the way you described it. When I first met you, compared like where and who you are today, it's incredible, the transformation that's happened with you. And I don't know, we've all gone through ups and downs in our career. Some days we made more money than others, or we had more deals, or we had more awards, or whatever. And then there are other seasons we go through. But I love the place you're in right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Thanks,
you're in an awesome place right now.
Thanks. Yeah. I feel like I'm in a good place. And I think where that has come from is a couple years of searching, like really, really searching, trying to identify like, who am I really? Right. Yeah. And like not putting on the masks. And honestly, that's partly where this whole podcast originated from, is because I'm like, dude, there are too many people, not just real estate or mortgage or home building, but just in business, where it's like everybody puts on the proverbial suit and tie, they wear the mask, they try to be somebody that they're not. And what I love about you, dude, is like Tom Martinez is Tom Martinez, whether he's representing Valiant, whether he's representing himself as a family you get the same Tom Martinez, dude. And it's somebody that is really, I think of you, I think of salt of the earth, I think of integrity, I think of honesty.
Well, it's funny you say that, because a little bit of background I think we were going to get into, but I think it's relevant to what you just said, which was, for most of my career I spent in the corporate home building side of things. And really only in the last 4.5 years, since the end of 2019, have I ventured out and become an entrepreneur, and started my own company, which I have a whole lot to say about that.
I want to talk about that because there's a lot of people listening to this that like they might be currently in a job. Maybe they're an entrepreneur with another company.
Right.
They're looking to like spread their wings and fly, right? The economy's changed. Inflation's gone through the roof.
Yeah.
Like, dude, making 200-300 grand today, it's not the same as it was 10 years ago.
Not.
Right. And so I definitely want to get into that, especially because this is a more recent transition for you. So,
And to spend all those years kind of, in corporate America, I climbed the ladder, the corporate ladder, worked my way, worked hard, sacrificed a lot early in my career, even some family stuff, just as it was pursuing greatness, and I always talked about the next goal, the next goal, the next goal. Finally actually became a division president, of a publicly traded home building company, and thought I had hit the pinnacle. I was making, great money. And what I ended up realizing was I was putting on that mask. I was wearing that suit. Maybe I wasn't as authentic as I knew I could be or wanted to be. And it's what really drove me. There was a lot of things in this, but it's what really drove me to kind of leave corporate America. And it's funny you use the word salt of the earth. And I appreciate that comment. When I started Valient, and there was a lot of reasons why, like that name resonated with me. And it's actually kind of a little bit of a biblical, reference. But ultimately, to be valiant, to take this step, be courageous. It was a scary step for me. Not being an entrepreneur, not having any money to do it with. Not being backed. It was me. Like it was a big step of faith, and think my wife was 100% behind me on it. But it was hard. And going back to kind of the point I was making is that one of the first things I did was I said, what are our core values as a company? What are we going to stand for? How are we going to make decisions? How are we going to base those decisions? And we came up with the acronym SALT, which is stewardship, abundance, loyalty, and transparency. And ironically, those are the 4 core values of our company. And they are the antithesis of what I experienced in corporate America, abundant thinking as an example, that there's enough to go around. That's not how it is, in a lot of our jobs and in corporate America. You're who can you step over? Scarcity is the opposite of abundance.
absolutely.
And scarcity is, you see it even when you drive down the highway. If you're merging in, you can tell who's an abundant thinker and who's a scarcity thinker. Because immediately, if you're neck and neck, and you got to merge over and you're running out of lane, do they slow down and let you in because they think there's enough to go around and that they'll ultimately get to where they're going anyway? Or do they, out of fear of loss, do they speed up and barely let you in because they couldn't lose that inch?
Dude, that's a great analogy. And I want to stay on this topic for a second of scarcity versus an abundant mindset.
Yeah.
Listen, if you're somebody where you're pinching pennies right now and you're struggling financially, like go spend money on the thing that you want and force yourself to live in an abundant mindset. Because what the message you're sending to the universe when you do that is, I believe in my ability, and I believe that we're in an abundant universe where more will come, right? As opposed to, a lot of times, especially when the economy tightens up, I think a lot of times people they do the opposite, right? They pull back, they restrict the flow of money, and they're living in that scarcity mindset.
Yeah, there's actually a really good book called The Go-Giver.
Yep.
And there's a second version of it. But I read that book when I got into sales. And I never would consider myself to be a sales guy. I'm an operator. I grew up in construction. I spent most of my early part of my home building career on the purchasing side. So I was bidding and negotiating and on the physical construction. But when the market changed in 2008, I had to shift gears. And
who were you at that time? Like
so
career-wise?
so I'd spent 8 years in Southern California, my wife and I got married in 1999. We moved to Southern Cal. I worked for Pulte Homes during that time, and just where I kind of cut my teeth in home building and corporate home building. And of course, economy crashed hardcore. Banks were falling. There was inventory everywhere. Everyone was, foreclosing or short
How far
selling.
into your career were you at that point?
I mean, I was 30 years old when the market crash, and I found myself as a young executive. I was a VP, not sure about what direction my career was going to go. So we literally packed up, sold our home in California, and I had some options, but it was scarce. It was that time the economy was scarce. I mean, it was really bad. So took a little consulting gig here in Colorado, and I grew up here, so was very familiar with Colorado. But we moved back 2008, September 2008. I did some consulting for a while, and then I needed a break from home building, so I got into sales. And actually it's a short story, but basically, the title company that I worked with on the home building side when I was consulting here in Colorado, I met some really great people who have influentially have become, pretty substantial in their roles today. But they gave me a shot in sales, and it was title sales actually.
No kidding.
And it was, title insurance was kind of.
Were you just burnt out with the corporate aspect of it, or were you just I see the writing on the wall and this is going nowhere quick. I got to pivot.
Well, plus there wasn't a lot to do.
Right. Banks aren't lending money.
Yeah,
right.
It was really tough, and so, I had to pivot. I had to find a different path, and I would say that's probably been one of my skills is having the ability to pivot and to adjust and kind of adapt. And part of it comes back to kind of focus, and I want to talk about that here too. But anyway, got into sales, but that was one of the first things I learned was the abundant thinking. Ended up going through ninja selling training, and did a bunch of trainings in sales. And I like to say, so I got back into home building in 2012, and big company that just went public and out of Texas hired me as their leader for this market. And I was employee number one and built that division up, and we got to about 300 closings a year, and it was an awesome journey. But I got an MBA in sales from that company. I learned a lot about sales. And so anyway, took all that, the operational knowledge, the sales knowledge, and then just the, quite honestly, the scars and the things you learn in your 20 plus career to start my own company.
Dude, you talk about being VP, number one employee, all of these positions that you have experienced. What do you looking back? What were the qualities that you had that you possessed, or who was it that you had to become in order for the powers that be to recognize you and go, dude, this is the guy? What are those? What was the skill set you had developed, the mindset, the attitude?
Yeah.
What are the intangibles? People listening to this going, man, I've been in different jobs, but I've never been more than this low level person or this mid level person, right? So what do you think are some of those things that you possessed?
Gosh, it sounds so, I hate for it to sound cliche, but there's no substitute for hard work. Okay, generationally, I'm 47. So, kind of growing up in a Gen X, we like to say Gen Xers, we were a little tougher than today's generation. We grew up in an analog childhood with a digital adulthood. I think that's how we were described.
Yeah, that's a good description.
I had a quarter in my pocket when I was a sophomore in high school to make a phone call. I didn't have a cell phone.
Yeah.
I got my first cell phone when I was a freshman in college.
Did you ever have a beeper?
I had a beeper. Yes, I had a beeper.
Those were the best, man.
Oh, yeah.
I almost wish they still had them.
I know. It actually would be better,
Yeah.
No, there's no substitute for hard work. I learned that through athletics. I learned that through just other forms of discipline things that I pursued. I've always been, so that was I would say this: one is you've got to be a hard worker. Two, if you don't have a mentor, I think it's really critical to surround yourself with people who are knowledgeable, who will invest in you. And I've always believed that the mentee needs to pursue the mentor. It doesn't work the other way around. So if you want to be mentored, you need to go make it known. Yeah,
For sure.
but go get a mentor. And that's something you got to really be careful who's going to mentor you. And then I would also say, so there's hard work, there's getting advice and mentoring. And then, there's just no substitute for doing. Be a doer, not a trier. In fact, one thing I would say is if you could eliminate one word in your vocabulary, eliminate the word try.
That's good.
Because you either do or you do not. And I think inherently this is a really fine line, a super fine line between those that try to be successful or try to get the next, place in their career, and those that just go get it and go do it.
So many people want to know how you did it, right?
Yeah.
How did you do it? How did you accomplish that? How did you get to that level of success? And it's like, no, dude, it's who you had to become.
Yeah.
It's who you had to embody, right? So
mimicking, let me tell you, if you want to be great, mimic someone who's great, mimic their habits, mimic their behavior, you want to be authentic too at the same time.
I was just going to say, how do you mimic somebody without sacrificing your own authenticity?
Because I've done that.
Me too.
Admittedly, I have done that. I won't name the name, but when I was at this LGI at this company, there was just one leader in our company who, quite honestly, I just admired so much.
Yeah.
And he was at the top, and I wanted to be like that guy.
Which, by the way, I think that served you though.
It did.
It's so good to admit that.
Yeah.
Right. Because if you constantly go around like you're arrogant or you got a big ego about it, you're not going to get anywhere. Your success will never, or your success will never exceed your level of personal development.
Yeah.
So if you see somebody that has what you want, mimic them. So how did you do it though? You mimicking him without sacrificing your authenticity.
Well, in that particular case, I probably pushed that line pretty close where we sounded alike, and I would say that was, I finally kind of realized it in myself, you just need to be you. And, but there was a lot of, but I will say there were traits that he embodied that I wanted to be like. And so some of that I think was good. It
like
made
what?
Kind of like this try thing,
Okay. Okay.
It
Philosophy.
was, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Like a mindset.
His mindset.
Yes.
Sure.
And so it's he's successful. He doesn't believe in this word.
Right.
I need to not believe in this word.
I should probably think the way this guy thinks if I want to get that result.
100%.
Yeah.
And so there was a little bit of that. You asked how to, you got to make it known. You also, if you want to be successful, you need to put it out there to who you work with and either the people that you work with you or for you or someone you work for, is that this is what I want. These are my goals. This is what I want to achieve.
Why do you think so many people are afraid to there's two people that enter a room, right? When you go to enter a room, it's either you show up and go, here I am, right? Or you show up and go, here I am, right? And it's being able to talk about the vision, because there's almost a level of accountability in that, right? And I'm not talking about flaunting
Correct.
the vision, but I'm talking about having those key people who are dude, this is what I'm going to do.
Can you clearly, so it's got to be clear in your own mind first.
Dude, absolutely.
You have to, so how do
I
you
struggle with that a lot. And it's why I've developed this habit of putting pen to paper.
Yes.
Right? Because, dude, I'll swim in my thoughts forever
Yes.
and think about 1,000 different things. But the second I put pen to paper, I see how ridiculous 90% of it is. But then I can clarify it.
That's why going to a retreat or going away for a training, if you get around smart people, you listen to a lecture or you listen to a podcast. I listened to a podcast just recently, And we were at a little bit of a road trip, and I'm like, "Hey, Shelly, grab my planner." So I'm an old school, like I like the planner. So I'll write a lot of stuff down anyway, just because.
Back, by the way.
Oh yeah,
I predict they're
I
gonna come
guarantee
back,
it.
right?
Guarantee,
Yeah.
man. I'm setting a trend.
Yeah.
Yeah, grab the planner. That was actually one of the things that was a cultural mindset shift for me, was the planner, like how to plan your business, how to stay out in front of the things you said you were going to do, and tasking them and making sure that you're checking those tasks off as you move along. Anyway, that's
Hold on, though.
yeah.
On that, do you look at that daily, weekly? Do you have like a week at a glance you're looking at?
I can tell you, my planner doesn't leave my side. Like I feel a little bit lost because it's out. I see it out there on the table out there, and I'm like, oh, my poor planner's out there.
It's happening
Yeah.
next. Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think that does for you, though? When you have the ability to just look at it quickly and recognize what you have coming up either that day or that week, how does that help you?
Well, in technology, I mean, listen, our technology is so good. Like most of my calendar stuff's on my phone, and my watch reminds me, and like all this stuff. So it's really more about like capturing thoughts from a meeting, or like I even have my goals in my planner. The beginning of the month, I do goals, and so if I want to check,
How often do you look at them?
I mean, I look at them every week, to make sure I'm staying focused on my goals. And my goals are SMART goals. It's
Are you talking just financial goals,
no,
business stuff? or
it's
everything?
one date night, a week, one date with my daughter this month, and so some personal goals,
Okay,
and
cool.
then of course there's the business stuff. And I capture the business goals really in three categories: people, which has always got to be number one. If you're going to run a company, or you're a manager of a division or whatever you're doing, you got to be in the people business, number one. Okay. Process is the second one, and you'll notice on my LinkedIn profile, it says Chief Experienced Officer, CEO, and a manager of people and process, like I've focused on people and process. So on my goals, I've got people goals, I've got process goals, and then I've got like project goals, things that are specific to our projects, our home building efforts. So
About like vision for your future, like I want the beach house, I want
Yeah.
the boat. Like, do you ever incorporate that into your goals?
and I should be, again, being specific, your goals have got to be, especially like, for today, your goals need to be attainable. That's part of being smart. Retiring today is not an attainable goal. So that is a long-term goal. That is a vision goal. That is a 5-year goal, 10-year goal, 20, whatever your goals are. You got to have those too. And I think that's a session that you do maybe one or two times a year, to kind of reset, what are your goals? Big picture. But most of the goals that I focus on are things that I can control and that I'm working on today. And those goals hopefully stack. You stack goals to get to where your ultimate long-term goals are. But hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, cool.
So anyway, going back to, kind of the how do we get there is part of that mimicking. And then I think probably the fourth thing is really continue to pursue your self-development, your training. And you were saying like two types of people walk in the room. You can be a person who learns how to have self-confidence and self-belief. Because, and you're right, some people walk in and one, they can't articulate what their vision is, and two, they don't have self-confidence.
Where do you think that lack of self-confidence comes from? Like, if somebody's listening to this and they're like, man, like all this sounds great, but like, oh man, they're playing, a lot of it's self-talk, right? Like,
No doubt.
Like, or it's the imposter syndrome. Like, I'm never gonna fit in. I don't have much money. I don't have, right? Like, whatever. I don't have the successful career. I can't even talk to people. It's like the way that people are talking to themselves.
Yeah.
It's almost a self-fulfilling prophecy where it's like they're getting the exact person that they don't want, but it's because they continue to remind themselves that that's who they currently are.
Yeah.
How would you build on self-confidence? Like, take somebody that's like totally broken.
Yeah.
And if you were to say, hey, here are some things you could do to rebuild that, what are some things you would have them do?
Yeah, it's a deep one, Derek, because I realize that some people maybe grew up with, a broken home situation, or they've been through a divorce, or, they lost a child, or like, there's a lot of things that, we're human beings, and I think it doesn't fall short of me that, as human beings, we're going to experience pain and loss. And, for me, I guess I would say, I go through tough things too, and I've been through some really tough things, and going through a season now that's tough, or changing season. And for me, I've always been able to kind of lean back on my faith.
Hey, did you guys just notice what he did, by the way? He said, I'm going through a tough season, and then immediately corrected himself. That's like, there's a tactic to that, right? Some people talk about scratching the record, because what happens is you're developing this, I'm sure there's a scientific name for it, but this like almost muscle memory, where it's like you're so used to like defining a situation in terms that but you have to be able to correct that so you can improve your self-talk. Because yeah, you're right, it's not a struggling season, it's a change of season.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, going to be going through a change of season.
And like, look, this is fucking hard what I'm doing right now, but this is what getting rich feels like.
Yeah.
Tell yourself that shit.
Right. Yeah, you don't gain, if anybody's, ever gone to the gym, it's tough to get gains. It's tough to build muscle. You have to tear the fiber in order to do it. And, it hurts. You're sore, the next day. And so it's, and I also think it comes back to this thing of focus that I was kind of mentioning. So I lean on my faith, I lean on my family, and I've been married almost 25 years next month, and to the same lady, right? Same woman. And we have 4 amazing kids. And yeah, we have a grandchild on the way. So, I lean on my family, but the last thing, and it doesn't necessarily mean that it's the last thing, but I would say I put my faith first, my family is right there, and then it's my focus. And there's really 4 things I've learned about focus. One is you focus on what you want, not what you fear. So what do you want? Do you want to be promoted? Okay. Well, if you want to be promoted, might be a good idea to make it known, to your boss that you really want to become the manager of the group, or whatever it is that you want to be promoted on. Or, hey, one of my goals is I want to make 6 figures. Okay. Well, that's good. You should want to make 6 figures. You might want to know what your why is, though, too, as it relates to that. Why do you want to make 6 figures? What is it that you want to buy with that 6-figure salary? Okay. So know that too. But focus on what you want rather than what you fear. But what do you fear? You fear rejection of making that known to your boss? Well, what's greater? Your want to make 6 figures or to be promoted, or your fear of how it may, they may perceive you? It's kind of like the analogy of, if you ever heard the story about, or the analogy of, you're standing at the top of a driveway, and if any of those out there who are parents, or maybe they've got a fur baby or something, and a ball rolls out of the garage, and it rolls down the driveway on a pretty steep angle, and the ball goes out into a busy street, and the baby, the toddler or the puppy or whatever, sprints for it, right? As a parent, what are you going to do? Well, what would our natural reaction be? You got a little guy.
Yeah,
you would haul butt, right?
Yep.
And there's a high probability you would run right into a busy street
without a doubt,
to get your little guy, right? Mm-hmm. Why? The reason why is because your love and your want is greater than your fear. And so, focus on what you want, not what you fear. And that's number 1. Number 2,
dude.
Yeah.
On that really quick, there's I don't know if you ever saw The Secret. There's a dude that's in that movie. They talk about the law of attraction. His name's Bob Proctor, and he uses this analogy of like listen, if you're in debt, don't focus on getting out of debt. Instead, set up an automatic repayment plan and focus on prosperity.
Mm.
And it's very similar to like the focusing on what you want thing,
Yeah.
right?
It expands.
It expands.
Focus on what you want, is part of how you expand.
Dude, and I've had seasons too where I've been no debt, lots of debt, but anytime I've had lots of debt, what good does it do me or anybody else to sit there and just focus on the debt? It's like, I know it's there.
Yeah.
I've got to compartmentalize it, put it aside, and how am I going to go make some fucking money?
Right.
Because that's the only thing that's going to solve the debt problem, right?
Yeah.
So number two,
It's focusing on what you have, not what you're missing.
gratitude.
Yeah, gratitude for what you have. So in other words, you want the promotion, but are you like really focused on what you're doing today? Like, are you really pouring in? Are you crushing it? Are you killing your job now? Okay. Don't worry about the promotion. Why don't you just be great at what you do and like love what you do? Focus on what you have, not what you're missing.
Getting your validation from your habits, from your process, right? Falling in love with
Yes.
that will produce the result. And I think too many people, it's like average people, they want instantaneous gratification,
Yeah.
right? It's always every time it's how much are you going to pay me to do this?
Right.
Right. But successful people are like, how much can I give and contribute? And
Yeah.
they're looking at the long game, right? It's like, I know I might have starting a business, right? I know I might have to put a few years into this thing,
Yeah.
but I'm willing to sacrifice and delay that reward because I know the reward on the other end will be greater than if I just accepted money right this second.
Yeah, and that whole phrase of like the grass is not always greener on the other side. I know there's been a lot of spins on that, but it comes kind of back to this like grow where you're planted. Like don't worry about growing in the field next door. Like grow where you're planted. Focus on what you have, not what you're missing. And make that be your mission today is to be super great at what you do now.
And I also think social really makes it challenging for people because there's so much comparison.
Dude,
right?
I struggle with this one. Of all the 4 focus things that by the way, I've got this in my planner, ironically. And so I pull this out from time to time. I train on it, not only with our team, but just I remind myself. But this is the one
Dude, that's gold.
that I struggle with.
That's gold, man. Well, it's like David Goggins said, right? Run your own fucking race.
Yeah.
Don't be worried about what other people are
Correct.
doing. But like if you can put your head on the pillow at night and go, dude, I fucking gave that shit everything I got. Like that's what's going to make you feel good, feel proud. And like a lot of people think that effort is what creates the result. And by the way, this is one I've really struggled with, right? Because I can be a workhorse. I can grind and grind and grind. But dude, it has nothing to do with effort. It has to do with frequency. It has to do with energy. Your frequency is what will produce the result. If you're operating on a low frequency, shame, guilt, you're depressed. By the way, anybody that's massively depressed, now listen, I know that there's one-off scenarios where people have actual like chemical imbalances and it's like a thing, but I think a lot of the depression going on right now, man, it's very selfish. Like if you really think about it, it's like, I'm sad. I'm not making enough money. Things aren't going well for me. Me.
Right.
Just why don't you go and fucking help somebody else and get out of your head? Go down to a
Change your
food
thinking
bank
from
or
being scarcity
to
be
do it.
abundant
That's
thinking.
right. That's right.
Yeah, you feel bad about yourself, go help someone else. It's amazing how much better you'll feel.
Yeah, because it's taking you out of self.
Yes.
Right.
And by the way, we were birthed selfish.
Yeah.
The moment we come out, we need. And it's about self-preservation. So, to get into more of a we, us together versus I, me, my, them thinking is another thing culturally at our company that I learned in the past, but it's what we do here. We don't say, if only those guys were to notice me more, or it's his fault that we didn't meet our quota this month. Instead of like taking responsibility and saying, no, we are going to achieve things together or we're not, you know, just having that I, me, my, them versus a we, us together, you know, kind of thinking. The third focus is one of my favorites. The fourth one's by far the key. Okay. The fourth one's the key. But the third focus is one of my favorites, which is focus on the future, not the past. And if you think about a windshield, okay, I mean, I love to like draw this up on the up on the board when I'm doing some coaching and some training, and I'll put this windshield up. Now, first of all, I draw it, and I'm like, do you guys know what this is? And most people don't know what it is. So, and then I draw the little rearview mirror, and they go, well, what is this? So I finally draw the rest of the car, and they go, oh, it's a windshield, yeah. And I said, hey, do you know why the windshield is so much bigger than the rearview mirror? And of course, you get a litany of answers, but the answer really is because that's what you need to focus on. If you spend too much time in the rearview mirror, what do you think is going to happen when you're driving down the highway at 75 miles an hour? I mean, the likelihood is you're going to go off track. And so you got to stay in the windshield is the lesson.
Dude, it's amazing how much that holds people back. It's
no question.
Dude, why focus on the past? There's nothing you can do about it anyway.
Correct.
Look, like turn the other way. You're not fucking going in that direction anyway.
Yeah,
right?
100%. You can't do anything about it.
But that is a tough one for some people. Fortunately for me, it's I've always been focused on the future, but dude, my wife struggles with that, man.
Yeah.
Like, she talks about the past a lot, and it's, work that she's doing on herself right now.
Yeah.
But it's a good reminder because it's easy to get caught, especially if there's trauma in the past.
Yes.
Right. You mentioned divorce, or if somebody was, God forbid, raped or molested,
right,
and they're dealing with some of that stuff. But, how many people have something in the past that's holding them back from pursuing a better future,
right,
but they're also not willing to do the work to fit. Like, I think that's so important. Is like,
well,
do
it actually
the work
goes, it actually goes
through
back
that shit.
to focus on what you want versus what you fear.
Mm-hmm.
You want to get better. You want to be in the windshield, but you can't get past the hurt of this thing. So what you want is, if that's what you really want, then you'll lean into maybe getting some counseling or coming alongside a women's group or a men's group or whatever helps you. You'll read that book that's been sitting on your shelf forever that is about forgiving the past. I mean, one thing I will say about that particular topic on future and past is that, this idea of forgiveness, a boss is scoring you, or a coworker scoring you, or you didn't get that loan, or or you lost out on this bid, or whatever. You got screwed. When you take on this cloak of forgiveness for the situation and the person, it's really not for them. It's for you. So if you've been hurt in the past, my advice would be forgive them. Forgive the past, because it's for you. You'll be better. You'll be filled up. You'll remove that, whatever that is that's hurting you.
Why do you think some people are just so like, I could never forgive that person. I'm never gonna forget. I'm never gonna forgive. They're so stuck in it. I thought about this, and I think that a lot of times the reason somebody stays stuck in that is because they're actually having a positive effect from continuing to tell themselves that story, and by the way, other people that story, and stay stuck in the past. I can never forgive this person for doing this. Well, when that story is shared with other people, I mean, until they get tired of hearing it, but for the most part, people are gonna, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry that happened to. But it gives that person a sense of significance. It gives that person a feeling of like, I matter. So I think it's coming from a good place. It's coming from like a self-preservation place, right? But ultimately, it's keeping them from a better future.
Yeah, I'll use myself as an example in this case. So about 3 years ago, a little over 3 years ago, I fell off a ladder. I mean, I'm a year and a half into my business,
Oh, that's right.
and I fell off this ladder. I mean, this for the kids at home, this is not a fashion statement. My little eyebrow.
I didn't even notice it.
Yeah,
Oh,
not a fashion
interesting.
statement. You know,
You should take the buzzer to the other
yeah,
side.
yeah. So 2 on this side,
Yeah.
1 on this side.
Yeah, exactly. Little teardrop.
yeah.
Right? It means you killed somebody. I'll tattoo you right now, buddy. I got the gun. No.
It's like, wow.
Yeah.
So, but I told that story to lots of people, about falling off that ladder. I mean, I also I used to say yeah, most men would have died, on that deck, but I'm not like most men,
I'm not like most men, yeah.
Yeah, I was in the hospital for 3 days. It was pretty rough.
Jeez.
But I could go on and on about that story. Why? I've thought about it recently. For some reason, it's been kind of coming up recently. I've been thinking about why did I tell that story so much? I think there was maybe a little bit not bragging, but I went through this, sort of a thing, and I persevered. So maybe in a kind of a similar way, even with successes, I accomplished, so the whole focus on the future rather than the past is actually doesn't all have to be negative. Even your successes from the past, if you focus on them too much, what are you avoiding, or what could you be missing in success in the future? Yeah, I mean,
I didn't think about that. Focusing on the success is almost just as bad as focusing on. Well, yeah, because it's also tying your identity to something you accomplished then. But what you accomplished then doesn't mean you're going to accomplish it again.
I mean, I am not the same.
It's like Al Bundy, dude.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I'm talking about every episode he's talking about how he ran the 40 in 2.5 seconds and scored all the touchdowns. Yeah. Dad.
On Couples Retreat, if you watch Couples Retreat, he's like, you want to check tape? Yeah. You want to check film? Yeah. I crushed it in high school. I was a champion in high school. Yeah.
Check tape.
You want to check some tape? Yeah, I'll show you some tape.
That's fun.
I played quarterback, man. Yeah. Anymore, my arm would fall off if I threw a ball, So no, it's true. So focus on the future, not the past, right? So I think that's number 3. Okay, number 4. This one will change your life. And it sounds so simple, but I am telling you, for everybody hearing me, this was a life changer for me. Okay? Focus on what you can control versus what you cannot. And there are very few things in this life that you can control. Okay? But you can control your attitude and your response, your actions. That's it. You can't control your spouse. You can't control the economy. You can't control the weather. You can't control even our health. I mean, you can do something to help, but you can't control it. You can't control your promotion. You can influence it. You can work hard, but you can't give yourself a promotion if you're not the boss. Okay. I can go on and on and on about all the things that we worry about and all the things that we stress about and all the things that we talk about that, quite honestly, are a waste of time and energy because you can't control it.
It's almost like, the person who's constantly borrowing problems from the future, right? They're talking about this hypothetical situation. They think that because they have some data or information now that they can predict what's actually going to happen in the future. And I would go a step further and even say, not just the control piece to that, which is amazing, but surrender.
Yeah.
Right? Surrender.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of people take that the wrong way too. They're like, okay, well, I'm just going to surrender and let it all happen. It's like, no, dude, you still got to do the footwork.
You got to absolutely do.
Right? Do the footwork, but surrender to the outcome. It's like, dude, I've made all my calls. I've done everything I know I have control over that I can possibly do to influence or impact the result. But dude, at that point, it's like, Let it be God's will instead of mine.
Correct.
Plus, my will's never really gotten me anywhere anyway.
Right. And you know, some people ask, like, why don't you, you know, stress about that situation? And I'm not saying that I don't get stressed, but I have to remind myself what I can control and what I can't. And when I learned this was about 8 years ago that I really learned this technique. And it's not, I don't want it to be toxic positivity, because you've heard that phrase before. You know,
Yeah, sure.
there are certain celebrities that kind of get tagged with this. I actually think there's nothing wrong with being a positive person. I think it's a lot better to be around. But the point is that, listen, you're not going to catch me wasting a whole lot of time on worrying about something I can't control. So we're not going to talk about it. In fact, I have a lot of experiences with this where it could be a client, it could be one of my employees, it could be one of our trade partners. They go on and on and on about all of this stuff. And I'm just sitting there listening and just wait until you're done. Okay, now, what are we going to do?
What are we going to do about it?
Yeah, because I'm not worried. I'm not going to focus a lot of energy and time on what all the problems are. I can't control them. All I can do is focus on,
Or they've happened. So now what?
they're done.
Yeah, like
It's over.
Let's remind each other of why we're here.
Right.
This is the result we're trying to accomplish.
Yeah.
That shit happened, but here's where we're at. What are we going to do about it to move forward?
I mean, I'm, you know, admittedly, I can tell you, I have faced lawsuits. I have faced, you know, financial situations, and I sleep like a baby. I sleep
Wake
like
up every 2 hours and cry.
Well, no, like a real baby that's fed, is really happy, and,
Like a rock man.
Yeah. Yes, your baby. Yeah. No, I mean, I sleep really good at night. Honestly, I do, because I don't spend a lot of time worrying about what I can't control. Now, if I do worry about anything, it's I've got an A task tomorrow to do this, you know, and I've got a full schedule, so I got to make sure we focus on this because I know it's what's going to help us move this forward. I'm focused on the future. I'm focused on what I want. I'm focused on, you know, again, just kind of the.
How do you draw the line though with like feeling like, hey, this is my responsibility versus it's an overreaction from somebody else, so I'm not going to go there.
It depends. Right? Well, so give me an example, if you have one.
Yeah, like maybe let's say it's a client, right? And the client feels like this happened, and this happened.
Yeah.
Right? Whether it did or didn't, they feel like this, and this happened.
Something that they're upset about.
There's something that they're upset about, right? Like in my world, it might be, hey, we thought you were giving us this rate, now it's this rate, or whatever the thing is. And I know that I've done everything I can do to deliver a great experience or to have a great result, and it's a misunderstanding. I still tend to be like, man, how could I have delivered that differently? How could I have set better expectations up front? How can I train my team better to have better community? It's all, but sometimes I almost get upset with myself because it's like, dude, but at the same time, how do I draw the line and stand up for myself, right? So, if I'm constantly like trying to be responsible.
Yeah, no, this is a good one. I feel like most of the hard conversations I've had over the last 3 years with clients has been about money and time. Because what we do, we're a home builder. And so, we work in an imperfect conditions with imperfect people, with imperfect products, and expect a perfect result. Like it's just impossible to do. And so I find myself feeling like I'm apologizing a lot lately. I learned this technique from a mentor of mine, but it's called the cushion, question, commit, handle process.
Cushion, question, commit, handle.
Yeah. Okay, so, when someone's upset at you, a customer or whatnot, they feel like they got misrepresented on the rate or whatever. The cushion is, listen, I'm so sorry that you feel that way. Just immediately cushioning. I think most people just want, when they're upset, they want to be heard. I think most people, when they're upset, they just want to know that you are hearing what they're saying, that they're upset.
Dude, By the way, every time I take that approach, like
Yeah.
with the cushion, where I'm like, or I just listen to him and I'm
Yeah.
like, man, I totally understand how you
Yeah.
see it that way, or how you feel. Like if I agree with them,
Yeah.
maybe not agree is the right word, but like I guess acknowledge and let them know that I'm hearing them.
Yes.
It always goes so much better after that than if
100%.
I'm like, no, that's not what right. Like if I start to fight it,
Yeah.
that's when things escalate.
Because remember, people don't care what you know as much as they want to know that you care. That saying. And so, so I would say that that's probably an important thing to learn how to do. It's a technique, by the way.
They don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
Yeah. And so it's like, you know what? Hey, I'm sorry you feel that way. And by the way, it's okay to feel sorry that they feel that way. It doesn't mean they're right. But it's okay to say, oh, I'm really sorry you feel that way, or that's the way that it came across, or whatever.
Can you even do that if you're like, I'm really sorry you feel like that.
Well, that's inflection,
Just
right?
joking.
You're right, because like, yeah,
Roll
real
on your
sorry you
eyes.
feel that way. Yeah, bonehead. You shouldn't have gotten in the way. So hey, sorry you're feeling that way. That's definitely not what our intention was. Let me ask you a question. This is where the
Cushion
question,
question.
because the question, anytime you ask somebody a question, what does it do? It gets them
Get them to
talking.
talk and answer.
And it gives
typically.
you get some clarity as what's the real genesis of the problem, and
Dude, that's so good, by the way. I feel like it's such an overlooked sales technique, like really trying to identify the objection, because usually it's always like 3-4 levels deeper than what they're initially telling you. Usually it's a deeper objection. You got to just hang in there long enough and ask the right questions to get them to feel comfortable,
Right.
Because sometimes it's a trust thing, or they don't feel comfortable.
Correct.
Right? Like especially in our business, if somebody has jacked up credit or something, they don't want us to pull the credit report.
Yeah.
Usually it's shame and embarrassment.
Yeah.
So it's like I've got to get them to realize, like, dude, I had my FICO score in the 500s. I had 9 foreclosures. I went millions of dollars in personal debt.
Yeah.
But I got through it. You can too. I can help you get there, right?
100%.
But it's like sometimes being vulnerable and leveling with them helps. All right. So question, keep going.
Yeah. So you asked that question. By the way, for all young people in sales listening to this, you need to become an exceptional question asker. Like you need to develop a line of questioning. If you want to be great in sales, you have got to become an exceptional question asker.
Dude, the better the question. And if you watch a pro do this,
Oh yeah.
they don't talk very much.
No.
And it's amazing how they still convince you to buy from them.
Yeah. In fact, in the sales environment that I used to be in when I was in this one home builder, we actually had a bullpen. And so when a sale would walk right out the door, as the manager, I would call the rep in and we would sit down and be like, well, what could we have said? What could we have done? And would you like some feedback? Because I observed you on this setting. And the rep would be like, yeah, they just didn't want what we have and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, well, would you like some feedback? He's like, oh, yeah, sure. I'm like, well, one, you did all the talking. So no wonder they're not interested. Okay, you didn't hear what they had to say. Number two, here's how we're going to fix that. You're going to grab a cup of coffee and with the next setting, and you're going to drink about 3 cups of coffee before you get up and sell them anyway.
That's good.
Yeah, you better spend about an hour building rapport before you think you're going to sell them anything. And anyway, we could get into a lot of sales coaching, but anyway, so that's so going back, I think, to what you were saying. So the cushion, question, commit, handle. So now that we've asked him a question, now we got a little bit of clarity as to what the issue is. Now you get to what you can commit to. Okay, and this is
Them to commit to, or
what you can commit to.
Got it.
So now,
Okay, give us an example.
so let's go back to your whole, like, they're upset by the rate.
Okay,
Hey,
cool.
Janet, really sorry about maybe the communication here, in particular how maybe it was set up with how this rate would be, but this is the rate that we're dealing with based on these factors. Let me ask you if
So realistic scenario would be like, hey, this is what rates are at today.
Yeah.
And then fast forward, it's 2 months later, and they're upset that the rate 2 months later isn't the rate that you talked about
Right.
2 months prior because the market moved.
Right.
So that might be a better like real life scenario.
Yeah, and I think it's okay to say to Cushion to say, "Hey, I'm really sorry that we're kind of where we are today." And no, it certainly was not our intention to we couldn't necessarily understand what was going to happen 2 months later, but at least you can acknowledge that that feels bad. I'm sorry about that.
Sure.
Let me ask you, what is it about this rate that matters so much to you? Let them talk. Well, we really want a lower payment for our because we're on a fixed income. Oh, okay. So payment's really more important to you than per se a rate, and this is where you got to put your creative cap on. Like, well, how can you solve that problem? Could be some sort of credit that lowers the basis.
Exactly.
There's lots of, arms, like find a path. But that's what you get to this third step, which is the commitment. I'll tell you what, Janet, now that I know that, what's really important to you guys is the payment, let me and my team go to work and give you 3 options that in the next 2 weeks that you can really consider. How does that sound? 1, you've committed to something that you can control. You can get with the team and you can come up with options, right? You controlled it. And you were specific about delivering it on a time. Now, the handle is the part that a lot of people drop the ball on. So they cushioned, they questioned, shoot, they even committed to doing something about it. Then they didn't do it. They didn't deliver. And so now the customer feels let down again.
Overpromise, underdeliver.
Yeah, exactly. So do what you say you're going to do. And if you follow this cushion, question, commit, handle, we deal with it in warranty all the time.
Okay.
Something bad comes up with their, something that happened that we built and they're upset about it. They paid a lot of money for it. So we need to use that cushion, question, commit, handle process to get to where we want to go. But that's going on what we can control. That's a process. Follow your process. Have a process, number 1. And then follow it.
Dude, I love that, man. That's awesome. So can you repeat those for everybody?
Yeah.
Just so that
So,
they can hear?
and it's funny because I have this in my planner.
That's awesome.
Ironically, I like paper,
Yeah.
or
I'm
I'll
gonna make a copy of that shit and put it on my mirror.
or I'll have it on my wall, right? There's something to remind me. But focus on what you want, not what you fear. Focus on what you have, not what you're missing. Focus on the future, not the past. And focus on what you can control versus what you cannot.
Dude, I love that, man. So what's the future look like for Tom Martinez? And then can you share any like secrets for having such a sustainable relationship and marriage, man?
Well, focusing on what you control.
Yeah. Nothing in there like go hard of hearing.
Yeah.
That's not in there.
So the future for I'll talk to the company first, and we're not, and I don't want this to be necessarily a sales pitch, but we're just focused on getting better at what we do. And home building's tough. We're focused on raising capital because we want to go build our own projects. It's one thing when I like to tell the story. It goes back to kind of like look at the past, but I used to operate a battleship. When you're a publicly traded company or you're well financed. It's not so much like your problems aren't raising money. Your problems are how to spend it, and how fast to spend it. When you're a small company, you're in survival mode all the time, and you're figuring out where's your next, source of revenue coming from. And then you kind of grow past that to, all right, well, how do we sustain our own growth by raising our own capital and going and building on this? So that's a big focus of ours.
Hey, so like a custom, semi-custom home builder like yourself, so like to really fund that next level properly, what do you got to raise for that?
Yeah, land's expensive, and sometimes you buy land that's has to be developed, and that adds another layer. And they're commiserative. We typically, when we look at if you're going to build $1 million home, you really can't be into that lot for more than $200,000. So if you buy a lot and it's got to be improved, you got to make sure you're not into it for more than 200,000. If your sales price is going to be close to $1 million, I'm just using the million because it's easy to do the math. If you're going to do 10 of those, then you need $2 million, to buy the land. And then you need all the money it takes to, to build. And, typically you don't want to just go build 10 spec homes. You're probably going to pre-sell, build, maybe build one spec, pre-sell, build, and kind of work your way through it. On the remodel side, it's a shorter cycle, both sales cycle and the building typically. It takes longer to raise capital, buy land, build a home, sell it, close it. Whereas a remodel is a shorter cycle. And so we're always looking for opportunities to go in. We've learned a lot from the past. We've gotten better and better. We got a great leader, for that particular business, and we'll grow in it. But so that's on the business side. That's really kind of where the focus is. And in the last year, with interest rates doing what it did, I mean, it affected capital. It affected borrowing power. So some of our clients had to pull back, just because of their financing needs. And so, we've learned to navigate it. And again, when you run into adversity, you have to learn how to shift. You have to learn how to introduce something new or be flexible to go do other things. But anyway, on the marriage side, 25 years is a long time, and we got married so young. I mean, we were at our wedding, we couldn't even have alcohol. My wife was only 20.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Crazy.
Yeah. It was young. I was young. I was 22. And, but you learn how to, we grew up together. I mean, we basically kind of grew up together, in our 20s. And, I kind of feel like we're kind of an anomaly of sorts,
Totally, because that's when people are going through so much change and transition. They're figuring out who they are.
Yeah. And we had kids young too. And we were in our mid 20s. So now we're enjoying, our kids now are, we got, one that's married and is now having a baby. We've got our oldest son, Thomas. He's in the Marine Corps right now, out in Virginia. And then we have a son that's a senior in high school and one that's going into her freshman year in high school. And so, I would say too, like growing together as a couple, learning how to communicate. The one thing I love about my wife, Shelly, is that she has had an unwavering amount of support for me. And for my career,
That's huge.
It was huge. I could not have done what I was doing without her support. Now, I did it because I wanted to be a great provider too, and I wanted to, contribute. But
yeah, I just have a quick question on that. Like, so she's a big supporter, or has been a big supporter of what you're doing. When it comes to financial investments that you just know, because you're connected to what you're doing so intimately, you just know you've got to do this thing.
yeah.
Are you ever consulting with her saying, hey, I've got to spend this money, what do you think? Or is it like, hey, I spent this money, I'm just letting you know? Like, how do you differentiate being a leader but keeping her in the know, or making her feel like she has a voice, right?
Yeah. I did not do this really well early, which is, I guess, part of the lessons learned in retrospect. We're more tied at the hip today, this far in, than we've ever been. She knows my business. So part of even the core value of transparency, like my calendar is wide open to my wife. It wasn't always, and not because I had anything to hide. I just didn't think it was, important
Necessary.
or her business. Like if I got to go have a happy hour meeting with a group of people because I'm building the business or I'm building the brand or whatever, like that's what I'm going to do. Today it's far more transparent. It's been that way for a few years now, but it's far more transparent, which has given her confidence too. And
was there ever a time where she was asking questions like, why are you going to this happy hour? Why are you doing this? Like, this doesn't seem like almost questioning your sense of judgment with what is considered your best use of time for the business.
Well, especially when the kids were little, it was like she's crushing it all day. And so that does. I think having those conversations early, if you can, to outline the why are you having to do this, and listen, if you don't see any benefit from that, those efforts, and it's not benefiting the family or not benefiting your relationship, you might want to consider it getting rid of it, and so I'd say that's a big one. And then I'd say another thing too is we've learned how to really communicate, even when we're frustrated with each other. We've learned how to communicate, and she gained her voice over the years too. Like that was part of it, and it was early on. It was, you're just in love. You want the best, and and you kind of start to kind of fall into your roles. But we're old school too, traditional kind of thinking, and so but no, my wife has evolved a lot over time, and we've grown a lot together. That's trust me when I tell you, there are plenty of times in your marriage where you go, are we going to make it? This is hard. Marriage is tough. I mean, I think that's why the divorce rate is so high, because it's tough.
What do you think it is that keeps people, even when they're at that breaking point where they're almost doubting things, like, is this the path I want to continue on? Have we changed too much? What do you think it is that keeps bringing people back?
Yeah.
Right?
For some people, it's just simply commitment.
Commitment. Mm-hmm.
I mean, when you stand up there and you take your vows, and it's till death do you part, do you really mean that? Like, because it's nice to say, but when you're...
Feels good at the time.
Yeah, but when your spouse is struggling with whatever, a past issue, their weight, their workplace, your private time together, an illness. I mean, illness can change the course of how you did things. Money is by far one of the biggest stresses that we'll go through in our lives. So just going back to kind of like the try thing, don't try to be married. Either you're committed or you're not.
That's good.
Just draw a line in the sand. Are you committed to this person or are you not? And, I kind of think that way. I'm more of a black and white, like even trust. I'm kind of am I going to trust you or am I not? Like, make a decision. Now I'm a little more
for sure
stagnant that way with regards to my belief, but which has hurt me in the past too. Like, I've trusted someone and they didn't do what they said they were going to do, and it hurt my feelings. But then again, I don't focus on the past very long, so I get past it quick. But I would say, that commitment, having commitment and being committed is a declaration, not just a nice, feely, touchy thing. It's a declaration. It's something you believe in. And then I would also say, lastly, is accepting your spouse for who they are is one of the best things you can do, and not who you want them to become.
Dude, where can people find you, Tom?
You can always call me or text me. I would tell you my email's terrible because I'm crushed all the time. But if you want to call me, my number is 720-234-5207. Always glad to meet new people, catch up, text me.
LinkedIn?
You can catch me on LinkedIn. You can catch me on Facebook. I'm supposed to be on Instagram more. I'm not as much.
We're going to change that.
We need to change that. And always glad to, meet new people. And I always want to learn too. So I'm, one of the things I did when I started the company, I put some mentors, a board of sorts of advisors around me. And so I go to my board regularly, for advice and counsel. And that list is short. I mean, I can't go to everybody, but every one of them has kind of a unique place in my life and my business. But well,
guys, if you're looking for high level input or advice or a mentor even, reach out to Tom. If you're looking to build a house, reach out to Tom. Make it known that you want help, that you're going down a certain path. But if you're anywhere in real estate, home building, really anywhere in that industry whatsoever, I think Tom's just your insight and perspective is refreshing. It's very different than just the typical realtor, lender, or whatever. So anyway, thanks so much, dude, for being on the show, man. I appreciate you.
Turn that loss to a check. Every time that I see a limit, I push right past it. Don't care if you got here first, the one to win is the last one standing. Say my life is like luck. Nah.